Welcome to True Echo, where powerful real-life inspired stories uncover truth, dignity, and unexpected justice. Today's story will leave you breathless, because sometimes the most ordinary settings become the backdrop for the extraordinary. What happens when prejudice collides with quiet power? And how does one woman's grace dismantle a system built on bias? Stay with us, this is one story you'll never forget. The afternoon sun washed across the marble floors of City Trust Bank in Manhattan, casting long golden stripes across the polished tiles. Businessmen chatted quietly near the loan desks, elderly clients waited patiently on leather benches, and the gentle hum of money-counting machines echoed through the spacious lobby. Jessica Brooks stepped through the glass doors with silent elegance. Her presence was like the quiet before a storm, unassuming yet potent. Her dark jeans, crisp black t-shirt, and light tailored jacket didn't scream wealth, but the handcrafted Italian leather bag on her arm hinted otherwise. She didn't glance at anyone as she walked, she didn't need to. She was here on business. As she approached the VIP section, her eyes briefly locked with Nicole Anderson's. The teller, a tall white woman with sleek blonde hair and eyes like winter frost, followed Jessica's every step. Nicole tilted her head, suspicious already. This one didn't look like she belonged behind that frosted glass. Jessica opened the door and stepped in with grace, walking to the counter with calm authority. Nicole was already watching, her lips drawn tight. Jessica smiled politely. "Good afternoon. I'm here to deposit cash and a check into my business account." Nicole didn't answer immediately. Her eyes trailed down Jessica's outfit, sensible, smart, but not what Nicole expected from a real executive. Her voice held a chill. "This area is for VIP clients. The regular line is over there." "I am a VIP client," Jessica replied, unfazed. "I have a corporate account with this branch." Nicole's eyes narrowed. Her gaze landed on the bundle of cash Jessica now placed on the counter. Her tone sharpened. "Where did you get all this cash?" Jessica raised a brow. "From my business. I'd like to deposit it." The moment had already gone sour. Nicole leaned forward, eyeing the bills like they were contraband. "I need to see ID," she said. Jessica calmly produced her license. Nicole scrutinized it like a counterfeit bill. "Is this really you?" she asked. "Do you have another form of ID?" Jessica kept her smile polite but firm. "That's never been required before." Nicole scoffed. "As per policy, I can request further identification if the transaction seems irregular." Irregular. The word hung in the air like smoke. Jessica said nothing. She reached into her bag again and produced her old Stanford University ID. "Here. I hope this helps." Nicole stared at it, then laughed lightly, a condescending chuckle. "Stanford? Really?" She tapped the plastic card against the counter. "Do you actually expect me to believe this is real?" Jessica's calm began to thin. "You're welcome to verify it." Nicole raised the ID to the light, squinting. Then, she picked up the phone. "Stella," she said crisply. "Come here. I've got a Stanford ID that looks suspicious." Less than a minute later, the glass door slid open and Stella Reed stepped in. With a calm, professional demeanor, she walked over. Stella had seen nearly every kind of client come through the bank's doors during her 15 years at City Trust. Her warm expression and no-nonsense energy made her one of the most respected employees at the branch. "What's going on, Nicole?" she asked, her eyes moving between Jessica and the Stanford ID Nicole held with visible disdain. Nicole's voice dropped to a condescending whisper. "She claims she went to Stanford. This card looks fake. You've worked in admissions, can you confirm it?" Stella frowned and took the card. She examined it for all of 10 seconds before her face relaxed. "This is real. See the embedded seal here? The font? The laminate detail? That's authentic." Nicole froze, her lips parting slightly in shock. She had expected Stella to validate her doubt, not disprove it. Her face flushed, but she managed a tight nod. Jessica gave Stella a small, grateful smile. "Thank you." Stella nodded with a courteous smile of her own. "Sorry for the trouble," she said softly before stepping away. But the damage had been done. Jessica had already endured far more scrutiny than the white customer who had been served moments before her without a single question. Nicole knew it, but pride would not let her back down. Nicole turned back toward Jessica and folded her arms. "Even if the ID checks out, we still need to verify the funds. A stack of cash and a check from some financial company? That's not normal." Jessica reached into her bag once more. "It's not from some company. It's from my company." She placed the business check carefully onto the counter. It bore the logo of Brooks Financial Group and was made out for $20,000. Nicole narrowed her eyes and picked it up like it might burn her. "Brooks Financial," she repeated mockingly. "Are you telling me you own this company?" Jessica nodded. "I am the CEO and founder. If there's any doubt, you're welcome to call the office and confirm." Nicole scoffed. "A young woman like you? Running a major firm? I've seen enough. This is a scam." Jessica's jaw set, but she did not raise her voice. Instead, she calmly took out a sleek, gold-trimmed business card and slid it across the counter. "Here's my direct contact. You can verify anything you like. Or I can call for you." Nicole didn't even glance at it. Instead, she reached under the counter and pressed a button. Jessica's eyes followed her hand, noting the silent alarm. A moment later, the door opened and Marcus Hill stepped in. Marcus was a towering man with deep brown skin, thoughtful eyes, and a calm, commanding presence. "Everything okay here?" he asked, surveying the tense room. Nicole's voice came sharp and confident. "This woman is attempting to deposit a fake check and possibly laundering money. She refuses to comply with ID protocols. Please escort her out." Jessica turned calmly to Marcus. "I've provided 2 forms of ID. I've offered to verify my check. I am CEO of Brooks Financial Group. This is a business deposit. Nothing I've done is suspicious, except, apparently, be myself." Marcus blinked, torn between duty and what his instincts told him was truth. His eyes moved to the business card on the counter, then to Jessica's steady, poised face. Nicole raised her voice. "Marcus, she needs to go. This is a clear fraud attempt." The room had quieted. Even customers outside the VIP section had begun to notice. Whispered conversations and glances filled the bank. Jessica let out a soft breath. "I'll say this one more time. Everything I've brought is authentic. My name is Jessica Brooks. My company is real. You can confirm with one phone call." But Nicole's arrogance had taken full control. "No need," she snapped, holding up the check. "It's obviously fake." Marcus, still unsure, reached for the business card. "I'm going to call this number, just to be safe." But before he could, Nicole slammed her hand on the counter. "You're wasting time. Just do your job and get her out." Jessica stood straighter, her tone calm but commanding now. "Marcus. Call the number." Marcus stepped to the side, pulled out his phone, and dialed. And then, a moment of silence as a ringtone pierced the tension, from inside Jessica's jacket pocket. Everyone froze. Jessica slowly pulled out her phone and answered. Her voice was crisp, authoritative, and clear. "Jessica Brooks speaking. CEO of Brooks Financial Group. How can I help you?" The entire room stilled. Nicole's face turned ghost white. Gasps rippled through the bank. Even the customers outside the glass walls stood stunned. Nicole's worst nightmare had just arrived, not in the form of punishment, but in the calm, devastating proof that the woman she'd spent 15 minutes trying to humiliate, was exactly who she claimed to be. Jessica ended the call with a quiet tap of the screen. Then she looked Nicole in the eye. "Now, Miss Anderson, do you still believe I don't belong here?" Nicole could no longer speak. But someone else did. The door to the VIP room flew open once more, and this time, it was Stephen Harris, the bank's branch manager. Stephen Harris was not a man easily rattled. In his early 50s, always impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit with subtle pinstripes, his presence alone commanded order. As he stepped inside the VIP room, he took in everything: the hushed crowd just outside the glass wall, Marcus's conflicted stance, Nicole's ashen face, and Jessica Brooks standing tall, calm, and unmistakably in control. His eyes immediately found Jessica's. He knew her. Everyone in senior management knew her. Not just because Brooks Financial Group handled massive portfolios with City Trust Bank, but because Jessica herself had been featured in Forbes and Fast Company as one of the most influential black female CEOs in America. "Jessica," he said, voice steady but tinged with regret, "I'm so sorry. I just got briefed on what happened. I should have come sooner." Jessica offered him a soft, composed smile. "Good afternoon, Mr. Harris. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." Stephen turned to Marcus. "Can you confirm what was said?" Marcus gave a sharp nod. Miss Brooks presented valid ID, 2 of them. A driver's license and a verified Stanford student card. She brought a legitimate check from her company and attempted a standard business deposit. Nicole refused to verify anything and claimed it was all fake. "I was about to call the office when," he gestured toward Jessica's phone. She answered the call herself. Stephen's expression hardened. Slowly, he turned to Nicole. Nicole looked like someone who had been hit by a truck made of truth. Her face was pale. Her jaw trembled. But her pride, still burning, forced her to speak. "I was just following procedure," she said, her voice shaking. "Large cash deposits, unverified checks, and irregular behavior. I had every right to request identification." Stephen's voice turned cold. "Irregular behavior?" Nicole opened her mouth but faltered. She'd said those words with conviction earlier. Now, in the face of her manager and half the bank watching through the glass, they felt like a death sentence. Stephen's tone grew sharper. "Miss Anderson, our policy is to verify. Not to assume. Not to accuse. And certainly not to humiliate a client, especially not a VIP client who has done nothing but follow every protocol you demanded." Nicole took a small step backward. "But I didn't know who she was." Stephen's eyes blazed. "Exactly. And that's why you should have treated her with respect. Not suspicion. Not bias. Not arrogance." Jessica stood quietly, hands at her sides, never once raising her voice. That calm strength, more than any shouting, shamed Nicole into silence. "I have built my company from the ground up," Jessica finally said, turning toward Stephen. "And while I've encountered challenges, rarely have I faced something so blatant and personal as what happened today. I didn't come in expecting to be recognized. I came to be treated like every other client, fairly." Stephen nodded solemnly. "And that's exactly what you deserve. What every customer deserves." Then, with deliberate slowness, Stephen turned to the glass wall. He opened the door and called out to the lobby. "Everyone, thank you for your patience. You'll be served shortly. I apologize for the disruption." As the door closed again, he walked over to Nicole, who now visibly trembled. "Nicole Anderson," Stephen said, each word sharp and final, "you are relieved of duty immediately. We will be conducting a full HR review, but as of now, your employment at City Trust Bank is terminated for cause, specifically for gross misconduct and racial discrimination." Nicole gasped as if punched in the chest. You're firing me?" Stephen didn't waver. I warned you before. There have been previous complaints. But today, you've embarrassed this bank. You've insulted a client. And you've exposed your own prejudice in front of every person in this room. Nicole's lip quivered. Please. This is all a misunderstanding. Stephen glanced to Jessica. Is it? Jessica responded quietly. No misunderstanding here. Nicole's composure finally broke. She staggered back, then lunged toward the counter, grabbing her purse with shaky hands. She looked at Marcus, eyes pleading. But Marcus stood tall, offering no sympathy. Miss Anderson, he said firmly, please exit the building. With shaking legs and teary eyes, Nicole turned and walked out. The bank was silent as the door clicked shut behind her. The noise returned only gradually, small murmurs of awe, whispered apologies, lingering glances toward Jessica as she stood, quiet and dignified. Stephen exhaled, clearly shaken. Jessica. I can't tell you how deeply sorry I am. She gave a small nod. Apology accepted. But I hope it won't end with just words. Stephen's expression turned solemn. It won't. You have my word. Then he stepped back and gestured respectfully. Allow me to escort you to the VIP lounge myself. Let's finish your transaction properly. Jessica followed him out of the glass-walled room. But this time, as she passed through the bank, no one doubted her. The atmosphere had shifted completely. Customers looked up, some nodding respectfully. Employees stiffened at their stations. And those who had once ignored her presence now looked at her with humbled reverence. She had entered as a stranger. She left that room as a name everyone would remember. Stephen led Jessica into the VIP lounge, a space designed for the bank's wealthiest clients. Plush seating, marble countertops, and complimentary refreshments offered a stark contrast to the hostility she'd just endured. But Jessica wasn't distracted by luxury. She sat down with quiet grace as Stephen handed her the final transaction documents. I'll personally handle your deposit and make sure your account is updated immediately, he said, his voice careful, professional. But beneath the surface, guilt lingered in his tone. Jessica simply nodded and opened her leather folder. I'd appreciate that. And thank you for your professionalism now, even if it came after everything else. Stephen paused. He could have offered another apology, but something about Jessica's poise made him choose a different approach. Jessica, he said carefully, I've known your company for years. I've read the profiles. I remember when you spoke at the city's finance conference last year. But today, I didn't recognize you. Jessica looked up at him. Her gaze was steady, unwavering. That's the point, Mr. Harris. I shouldn't have to be recognized to be respected. His face fell slightly. He nodded. You're right, he said. You're absolutely right. The transaction was completed in silence. Jessica signed the final form and handed it back. When she rose from her seat, Stephen extended a hand. She shook it politely but without the kind of warmth that forgives too quickly. If I may ask, Stephen said, hesitating, will you be keeping your company's accounts here? Jessica considered that carefully. She could see the tension behind his polite expression. He wanted to retain her as a client. He wanted to avoid the scandal this could cause. And deep down, he likely wanted to do the right thing. I'll decide in a few days, she said. But if I do stay, it won't be without change. Stephen nodded again, humbled. Understood. Jessica stepped out of the lounge, and this time, when she walked through the bank's lobby, no one looked away. Every person, client or staff, watched her with a different expression than before, respect, admiration, even guilt. Some employees subtly bowed their heads. An elderly couple on the bench near the front doors nodded at her, the man quietly saying, "Good for you." Outside, the late afternoon sun struck the glass panels of the bank's facade, creating long golden lines across the pavement. Jessica paused for a breath. The warmth on her face felt like an exhale from the universe, acknowledging the storm she'd just weathered. Then her phone buzzed. It was her assistant, Liam. "Jessica, are you okay? I saw what happened online. It's blowing up." Jessica blinked. "What do you mean?" "There's video," Liam said, his voice tight with concern. "Someone filmed it. Nicole calling security on you. You answering the bank's call with your name. It's everywhere, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Even a few finance blogs are picking it up." Jessica felt a strange, calm silence settle over her. She didn't smile. She didn't panic. She simply said, "Let it circulate." "Are you sure?" Liam asked. "I can contact PR, get ahead of it." "No," she replied. "Let people see it for what it was. There's no better press than truth." Across the street, a young black girl walking with her mother looked at Jessica with wide, starry eyes. Jessica smiled and gave a small nod. The little girl beamed. And in that moment, Jessica knew, this wasn't just about her anymore. It never had been. Inside the bank, meanwhile, the atmosphere was still tight with reflection. Marcus stood near the back, watching Jessica walk away. A coworker approached him, Latasha, one of the customer account reps. "You all right?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded. "Yeah. But that was a lot." Latasha exhaled. "She handled it like royalty." "She is royalty," Marcus said. "And that teller, she had no idea she was trying to throw out a storm." Upstairs in the bank's private offices, Stephen sat at his desk. He stared at Nicole's personnel file on his computer screen. Complaints. Notes. Red flags. He'd overlooked them too long. But he wouldn't anymore. Jessica's words echoed in his mind, "I shouldn't have to be recognized to be respected." And now the world would remember them too. By nightfall, Jessica's name was trending across multiple platforms. The video, taken by a customer seated near the teller line, captured every painful moment with brutal clarity, from Nicole's initial suspicion to Jessica's calm declaration of her name, and that final, stunning reveal when she answered the bank's call from her own phone. Within 12 hours, the clip had been viewed over 3 million times. Headlines spread like wildfire. Black woman CEO shuts down racist bank teller with one phone call. Power, poise, and prejudice, the Jessica Brooks incident. City Trust Bank scrambles after public outcry over viral discrimination video. Jessica woke early the next morning to a full inbox, dozens of missed calls, and a string of media inquiries. Her assistant Liam had already sent her a prioritized list of responses. CNN wants a statement. So does CNBC. Forbes is writing a piece regardless, he texted. You want me to schedule something? She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then replied simply. No interviews yet. But I'll make a statement. Let's keep this about the bigger picture. Later that morning, Jessica stood before a small podium in the lobby of her firm. With employees quietly watching from a respectful distance, she delivered her message in the same composed, confident tone that had carried her through the bank ordeal. This isn't about one teller. This is about a system that allows implicit bias to go unchecked. It's about how success doesn't shield you from prejudice, but how dignity, truth, and clarity can overcome it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't escalate the situation. I simply stood firm in who I am. She paused, letting the moment breathe. I believe in justice. But more than that, I believe in transformation. I am not pursuing legal action against City Trust Bank. I am, however, requesting that they invest in mandatory anti-bias and anti-discrimination training for all employees. Starting immediately. Reporters scribbled notes, cameras flashed, and in that moment, Jessica turned personal pain into a public pivot point. She had the opportunity to destroy the bank's reputation, but instead, she chose to rebuild it better. The clip of her speech was shared thousands of times. Activists praised her restraint. Politicians and business leaders reposted her quote with admiration. And slowly, even conservative outlets, which usually dismissed stories about racial bias, couldn't deny the sheer composure and clarity with which Jessica had handled herself. That night, Stephen Harris sat alone in his office at City Trust, watching the video again. He listened to Jessica's words, over and over, and knew, she had given the bank a lifeline. One they didn't deserve, but one he refused to squander. 2 days later, Jessica received a private invitation to return to City Trust. She almost declined. But something in Stephen's handwritten note changed her mind. "Your presence changed us. We want to show you what that change looks like." She arrived to a quieter, more respectful environment. Marcus greeted her personally and led her to the newly renovated training suite. Inside, instructors from a nationally recognized diversity and inclusion firm were already setting up, preparing to teach every employee at City Trust over the coming months. Jessica met with Stephen in his office afterward. "We're starting here," he said. "With every employee in this branch. And we've already committed to expanding the program company-wide." Jessica nodded, her voice even. "Good. Just make sure it's not just for show." "It won't be," he said. "Not on my watch." Then, in a move Jessica hadn't expected, Stephen reached into his drawer and pulled out an envelope. He placed it in front of her. "We'd like to make a $50,000 donation to the Brooks Equity Fellowship in your name. No press, no branding. Just quiet support." Jessica's eyebrows lifted in surprise. The fellowship was a small but powerful initiative she had created to fund first-generation college students of color, students like she once was. She reached for the envelope and nodded once. "Then I'll accept." As she stood to leave, Stephen added, "Jessica, thank you. For giving us a chance to be better, even after we gave you every reason not to." She paused, then replied, "I didn't do it for you. I did it for the girl watching me from the back of that bank. For the Marcus who couldn't speak up yet. For the clients who'll come in next week and won't have to endure what I did." And with that, she walked out again. Not just as a CEO, but as a catalyst. Jessica didn't return to City Trust again after that. She didn't need to. The work had already begun. Across the city, the ripple effect spread like wildfire. Business leaders gathered for panels on implicit bias. Local news outlets hosted televised town halls. Several other banks released public statements reaffirming their anti-discrimination policies, statements that wouldn't have existed had Jessica not stood her ground. But more powerful than the institutions were the individuals. At Brooks Financial Group, emails poured in from young women of color, high school students, college undergrads, entrepreneurs, all inspired by the story that had gone viral not just for its drama, but for Jessica's poise. They thanked her not for humiliating anyone, but for proving what dignity under fire looked like. One message read, "Ms. Brooks, when I saw the video, I cried. Because I've been Nicoled more times than I can count. But watching you reminded me I can still hold my head up and walk like I belong, even when the world says I don't." Jessica printed that message out and taped it to the inside of her office drawer. Meanwhile, Nicole Anderson's life was unraveling. The media coverage had faded, but the consequences remained. Her LinkedIn profile had been bombarded with comments. Friends from her past distanced themselves. Former colleagues quietly disavowed her. At first, she tried to frame herself as the victim of a misunderstood situation. But the receipts, the video, the transcript, the blatant words, told the world otherwise. Eventually, the facade cracked. For weeks, Nicole remained indoors, dodging cameras and phone calls. But the silence was louder than any noise. And that silence forced her to face the truth of what she had become, not a professional, not a gatekeeper, but a cautionary tale. One evening, after watching Jessica's full speech for the first time, without anger, without defensiveness, Nicole broke down in tears. She saw the difference. She remembered her mother, who told her to treat everyone the same. She remembered being the scholarship kid at a prep school, afraid of being seen as less than. Somewhere along the line, she had twisted that fear into superiority, and it had cost her everything. Nicole picked up a journal and began to write. I thought power came from control. From knowing better. But today I understand, power comes from listening, from letting go of fear, and from seeing people clearly, not through my bias, but through their truth. It wasn't redemption. Not yet. But it was the beginning of accountability. Meanwhile, Jessica continued to move forward. Quietly. Purposefully. One Saturday, she visited her old neighborhood in Brooklyn, where she'd grown up in a cramped two-bedroom apartment with her mother and two sisters. The corner store owner, Mr. Hassan, still remembered her. You always came in with a notebook bigger than your head, he chuckled. Said you were gonna build something big. You did. Jessica smiled. I had a lot of help. You gave a lot more, he replied. She walked the same cracked sidewalks that once carried her tiny steps to school and back. She stopped at the park bench where she used to read business magazines for hours, dreaming of the life she had now, never knowing how complicated that dream could become. That evening, she sat in the community center and gave a talk to a room full of teenagers. No cameras. No media. Just truth. She told them about the bank. About the injustice. And about how she didn't scream, didn't curse, didn't quit. I didn't win that day because I had money, she said. I won because I knew who I was, and no one else got to define that for me. One of the teens, a shy girl named Alana, raised her hand. How do you stay calm when people treat you like you don't matter, she asked. Jessica thought for a moment. Then answered. Because I know I do. And so do you. Months passed. The bank incident faded from headlines, but not from memory. Jessica Brooks didn't let it define her, but she did let it shape the next chapter of her mission. One spring morning, she stood on stage at a national leadership summit, facing a packed auditorium of entrepreneurs, CEOs, students, and civil leaders. Her story had inspired not just conversations, but real reform. Several Fortune 500 companies had launched their own internal reviews. Diversity and inclusion efforts became more than checkboxes, they became imperatives. Jessica wasn't here to relive the bank scene. She was here to speak about what came after. What I faced that day, she said, voice even, was not unique. What made it powerful was that people saw it. And they saw how I responded. Not with rage. Not with revenge. But with unwavering clarity. She paused and looked across the audience. Clarity in who I was. Clarity in what I stood for. And clarity in the fact that no one, not a teller, not a policy, not a system, gets to shrink the space I take up in this world. The audience broke into applause. Not polite. Not performative. But real. Because the world hadn't just watched Jessica's composure. It had absorbed her courage. After the event, dozens lined up to speak with her. She stayed until the last hand was shaken. Back at her office that evening, Jessica sat at her desk, looking at a new plaque on the wall. City Trust Community Honor Award, presented for integrity, courage, and change. She hadn't asked for the recognition. But when Stephen Harris called to say the bank had transformed its training policies because of her, and wanted to name the annual Community Award in her honor, she had agreed. Quietly. Across the room, her assistant Liam entered with a stack of letters. Still coming, he said. College kids. Single moms. Retired vets. People who saw that video and said it changed them. Jessica smiled and reached for the top envelope. It was a simple thank you card. No return address. Inside, it read. You didn't just handle discrimination. You dismantled it, with grace. Thank you for showing us how. Jessica closed her eyes for a long moment, then opened them again. Outside the window, the skyline of New York City glittered in the distance, unforgiving and vast, but somehow, softer tonight. Because one woman didn't walk away. Because one woman stood her ground with dignity. And because of her, the world moved a little closer to what it ought to be. They say power is loud. But sometimes, real power speaks softly, through quiet dignity, undeniable truth, and calm strength in the face of injustice. Jessica Brooks didn't win with rage. She won with presence. And in doing so, she reminded us all, you don't need to raise your voice to raise a standard. Let this story echo far beyond the walls of one bank. Let it inspire the next person to hold their head high when someone tries to shrink their worth. If this story moved you, share it. If you saw yourself in Jessica, speak up. And if you believe dignity should never be questioned based on how someone looks, then subscribe to True Echo, where stories like this shine a light on the strength we carry every day. Until next time, remember, respect is not a luxury, it's a right.